Hello, folks. Here we are. Science Bob and Lala Bright, and whoa, Steve Berg.
Hey, how you doing?
Man, oh man, it's been a while since we've seen you.
Yeah, how are you guys doing, my friends?
Oh, we're doing great. We're so happy to have your smiling face on here.
I'm super excited. Thank you.
Oh, thank
I've
you.
been yapping about it all week. So
Oh, you guys are sweethearts, is what you
Are
are.
you bringing any high strangeness with you?
I mean, it's always in the forefront of my mind, Bob. I live, breathe, sleep, and eat. 40 in topics. Give me the weird, give me the real weird stuff.
Really, really weird. Well, you can entertain us with weird. So tell us what's going on with Steve.
Oh, not much, Well, unfortunately, I've spent over 20 years living in LA, so I've been on the phone with all my friends today, and it's so bad there. It's crazy. So I don't want to, not to start off on a negative note, but yeah, be happy for where you are. Those people are in a real bad situation there.
I worked in LA. And I lived in Rolling Hill Estates and worked down in LA on in El Segundo at Aerospace and other places. And there are 9 cities down there that are gone.
Yeah, it's real bad. It's real bad.
This is the worst ever.
Yeah, I mean, definitely in Southern California. I think they're already saying it's going to be the most expensive fire in California's history, which is saying something as a place that's famous for fires. So,
right. Yes. So it's about time for people to wake up and realize that climate change is real.
Thank you. I agree.
Okay, so what's going on besides that?
Nah, man, not much. Just, got through the holidays. They were good. Good times, nice and relaxing. And I'm just kind of now I'm back, researching and doing my show and doing some work, just a mix of everything. I was shooting a movie out in LA.
Wow.
Funny enough, in December, I was out there a good portion of the month, and yeah, man, it's just, it's bad. It's weird, because I've lived there longer than I have lived anywhere else. So it is like the home to me. So it's messed up, but things are good. I've been following up in some local Bigfoot sightings that have been occurring outside of the Omaha area.
What's going on with that?
Well, it's funny because I love Bigfoot stories and cryptid stories, right? They're so fun. Yeah. But I had this kind of sub interest in urban Bigfoot stories. And
okay,
so it's fun because I'm tackling one of my own, because Omaha, I'm not sure if people are aware, but it's like a city. I think people think in Nebraska, it's like, oh, it's all farm fields, and a lot of it is. But Omaha, it's over 1 million people. It's like a proper city. But right on the outskirts of Omaha, this place called Lauritsen Gardens, which actually historically has Bigfoot sightings going back 50, 60 years. There was a pretty dramatic sighting at noon of a Bigfoot walking between 2 houses and then going into this botanical gardens at right during the day. And one couple saw it, and then two, it was either two, I believe it was two roofers saw it from a different vantage point.
Shit.
Wow.
And they spoke Spanish. They didn't call it a Bigfoot. They called it a hairy monster.
Oh,
wow.
So people,
caca.
Yeah, like they were, they were like shocked, and they didn't love that it happened. So
I would have fell off the roof. Oh my God.
So I've been scouting around there, scouring the area, kind of like going, taking photographs from different vantage points. I'm speaking with one of the witnesses next week, but this is what I do in my free time. Actor by day, weirdo by night. So,
is Bigfoot one of your favorite topics? What is your favorite, I guess?
Oh, lordy. I mean, since I was a kid, I've been obsessively reading about UFOs and stuff. So I feel like I know the ufological history probably better than any other thing. So it's kind of my first love, I suppose. But I I'm really into the writer John Fort and the kind of idea of,
sure, of course,
right? So I'm interested in the idea of all weird things, the strange and unusual. I'm not saying I believe this, but it's hard to ignore the parallels between a lot of these different topics where I think a lot of people think of them as ghosts are this, Bigfoot is this,
Right.
lake monsters are this, UFOs are this. And I'm like, I'm not so sure that's true. You know, like, and I'm also saying, I'm not saying that I believe that either, but like, I'm open to the idea that maybe there is a little bit of a connection with some of these things.
I'm fans of John Keel, John Tenney. I love Fordians. Following Charles Ford is just a way to organize your thought process and not cover yourself up with biases.
I mean, you took the words right out of my mouth, Bob. I feel like the Fordian spirit is also like spending all your time trying to find the answer maybe isn't the best like way to go about it, but it's like learning to ask better questions. You know, like I'm not sure if any of this stuff is truly answerable in a way that would satisfy us. You know, like I think the whole like with with like UFO, quote unquote, this modern incarnation of disclosure, I feel like the only thing that we would ever learn would be that they don't really have a better idea what this stuff is than we do.
But I do think
it's true.
I think we're teetering on the edge, like more than any other time that I can read about or think about.
Right.
Some government guy standing up and saying, "Okay, look, they're real, and here's what little we know, or what we know, or whatever."
Right. But
they're not going to admit all the bad things they've done.
Right. Or, I mean, I don't think they're going to admit their involvement in misinforming people for years and driving people crazy to the point of death or suicide or going mentally ill, I mean, so it's like when for me, it's like to wait around and hear the president come out and say, well, here's in the press conference, UFOs are real. And I'd be like, well, yeah, I know. What's next? And then,
but that's us. That's not most people.
Yeah.
We are a really tiny minority.
You're right about that. I also think, I mean, if you think about like the mainstream of UFO, while we are noticing an uptick and there's UFO Twitter, and it feels like UFOs are this really important topic, I don't think they are. I think most households aren't talking about UFOs. I mean, when there's drone incursions and stuff happening, I think there is a major uptick, of course. But I think people are worried about much more like
look, the presidential election and the new president being inaugurated, new Congress in, all these massive changes they're talking about.
Yeah.
And let's see.
It's terrifying.
One major war and looks like another one on the way, and we're in the middle of both of them.
Yeah.
And it looks to me like we're going to not stay out of the Middle East because Trump has promised he isn't.
Nope.
So I mean, we are in for an interesting year.
I mean, it's already starting off insane. But, but I guess, I'm not trying to be so negative on like modern ufology or like disclosure. It's like, if that's your thing, God bless, go for it. I totally think that's great. However, I think my own what I feel sorry for a lot of people in this kind of new incarnation of ufology, where I feel like they're missing the really interesting and fun stuff. Right. Like I would say to anyone who's like bored of this disclosure and bored of waiting around, it's like pick up Operation Trojan Horse by John Keel.
Yes.
Pick up Passport to Magonia by Jacques Vallée.
Yes.
And because like UFOs, when I think you use a lens through like a Keel, Vallée, and a handful of others, Greg Little, the list goes on. I think it is really, we're talking about philosophy and the meaning of life more than we're talking about aliens from another planet.
Of course we are.
And I think when you can start thinking about that, you don't feel the need to wait around for others to tell you what this stuff represents.
Well, the other thing is we have, let me be kind. We have 100 Twitter lords and podcasters and not any major new field investigators. No. So, and I am the first to admit that when all this stuff started in 2017, I relaxed and said, okay, they're going to tell us.
Mm-hmm.
And here I am 7, 8 years later, and I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm going back to thinking about how to help people discriminate good stuff from bad stuff with
That is
apps
great.
for their phones and other things they can do. And for major operators, I'm about to do the passive radar I promised Brandon Fugel and Skinwalker Ranch a year and a half ago. But then I thought, well, they've found most of what they're going to find, and the government's going to tell us. And then the last chink fell, and I went, they're never going to tell us. We've had major whistleblowers. They're never going to admit it.
What do you think about the Skinwalker Ranch? What do you feel about skinwalkers and all that?
I mean, like the lore of like skinwalkers, when it relating to it, like, indigenous peoples, like folklore and mythology, I think is wildly interesting. I was an old, I mean, like, I'm not trying to brag. This is not a brag, but I was a major fan of Skinwalker Ranch a long time ago when George Knapp released that book. I read it when it came out, I think in 2008, maybe. So much so that I tried to make a movie.
What?
Or I did make a movie. It's called Skinwalkers, literally. I shot it in Idaho in 2009. And it was my attempt at doing like a found footage version of this. I co-directed.
Oh, that's neat.
I mean, so like I was such a fan of the lore. George Knapp's original book was just like so compelling to me. I could not stop thinking about it. It was like everything in one place. This is my dream. But I mean, like, I sort of now have kind of lost interest in it completely in a way, like not being, like I've just moved on to other things. And just as a person who's made their living in the entertainment industry, they are, Brandon Fugel, and I believe he is a genuine person. I think he's like, but they're making a TV show. There is a script for it. They know exactly what they need in every scene, and they're going to see that it happens in every scene. So like, no reality show is quote unquote genuine. So the show's not that compelling to me, I suppose. I think with like paranormal UFO entertainment, I'd rather see something where it's actually people sitting in a library doing research and talking about ideas, as opposed to trying to show you something that can't be shown, I don't think, on video, like in a compelling way that's gonna like do anything for us.
Yep. So I'm all for that, and I'm all for trying to add meat on the bone of the videos so they're more interesting. In other words, recommend other data they can collect at the same time.
Yeah, well, Bob, you're like a super smart dude, like a scientist, engineer. I mean, like, you contributing in this way is so much more interesting to me than disclosure. I'm like, this is what people need to do. Like, as I feel like, why are we waiting around when we have talent like you who's willing to help out? And philosophers, artists, writers, musicians, I think this is like an all hands on deck situation. I don't think it just belongs in science. I think it needs to be studied by science. Absolutely 100%. But if I was like a trillionaire and it was to a lot funding, it would definitely be a wide array of like experts and professionals I would reach out to. And I'm like you mentioned, like John Tenney. John Tenney, to me, more than anything, he's not a scientist. To me, he's an artist philosopher. And
he really is. Yeah,
we need people like him.
Major Fortean.
Yes,
and
he is.
He had a fantastic program with Chad.
Yeah.
And ran into a buzzsaw of television BS.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. I've tried to produce, I shot a pilot for a show about Hi Strangeness, Forteana, and it was actually for Comedy Central of all places. And it went pretty good. They were going to do 6 episodes, but then COVID happened. And but the hurdles and how much I had to change it to appease network execs. Yes. I tried to do it for about a decade, was successful one time in the whole decade, but it was never going to be the way I want to represent the phenomenon, or or what I like about it. So I'm actually currently, I can't talk too much about it, but I'm working on an independently funded, me, myself, program dealing with folklore and legends and Forteana in different locations, in different rural locations across the country. So
I think like for the most interesting program to me in the weird.
Yeah.
in the last decade was Hellier.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you could go out and do some great stuff. And they were 5 people with a camera.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, you know, things have changed and you can do it a lot better.
You sure can. Yeah. You don't now. We live for the first time in like the last couple of years. We live in a time where you can build a whole film team, like a whole production with a handful of talented, like hardworking, talented people. I think you still need to make it compelling. And like Hellier looked good. Everyone who was working on it was just very talented. You know, like I can't remember the director's name. I know
Carl.
Carl. Yeah. Carl Pfeiffer. And he like, so he wasn't just any director. Like he was an unknown indie director, but like the team was really perfect to make. Because I mean, I talked to Greg too. It's like they literally did shoot it for nothing. It was just like their expense to get there. Carl owned the equipment, and so they just had a lot of talented people who were able to tell a compelling story and make it fun and interesting. And a lot of what's great about it is that they'll be like long shots of them sitting there reading a book, and I'm like, I like that, because that is what like researching and investigating this phenomenon is. It's a lot of reading. I mean, it
was well performed, and they did compelling scenes with the I call it ghost hunting, but whatever you want to call it, equipment, and all sorts of other things. And they built suspense and delivered.
100%.
And I love the fact that they showed that weird synchronicities happen all the time, and the path they started on, they couldn't stay on. They got drug off by events, and they didn't close their eyes to those things. They followed them.
Yeah, I to me, what they were doing, and like whether they knew it or not, and like I'm not saying like he invented this, because I feel like Keel was maybe doing what Fort was doing, but like they were like LARPing John Keel. And they were doing it the Keel way, where it's like you go it like it, when you read the Mothman Prophecies, for example, it is a great book. It is entertaining, twists and turns. I think some of it is definitely not exactly like what happened, and even Keel like admits a lot of the things he wrote about in the book probably weren't true. They were just stories, but great stories. But what's interesting about that book is the Mothman is the least interesting thing. It's everything else that's happening around.
Of course it is. And as Indrid Cole and the Men in Black were the most interesting things in the whole book.
Right, exactly. And Keel thought maybe the first interaction that Woody Derenberger had with Indrid Cole, maybe that was genuine, but he said everything that happened after that is 100% not true. Like it,
Wow.
I mean, it was a great, partially based on a true story fiction.
Right. And then, but then what is interesting to me is I'm very fascinated by the folklore term called hyperstition. And hyperstition, just to remind people, is opposite of a superstition, but it's a fiction that becomes real and is acted out and treated as real. And that's kind of what Hellier season 2 was, where they're taking the fiction of Indrid Cole, possibly or largely, and it became real for them. Do you know what I'm saying? And like,
and they involved Tenney and Greenfield.
Yeah,
and that's just royalty.
Yeah,
came to work with them.
Yep, exactly. But I feel like all this stuff works in a very weird way, where and this isn't my idea, but this is just ideas I really like. I do think it borrows from our archetypes and our narratives and our stories, and that's going to affect how we see it and experience it.
Right, exactly.
Potentially.
All right. So what are you doing besides UFOs on your shows now? Give us a couple of examples.
Jeez. I mean, I'm all over the map. I just had a few weeks ago someone on who, was very into ghost hunting and trying to really poke the bear and initiate stuff on her own, in her own house. And she's, had some success, and it's
in her own house.
Yeah. And she's also come up with this great new theory called the paranormal emotive touch point. And she feels like her name, it's so hard to explain. Like in a concise way, but basically it's like there are these emotional feelings that are like almost like little signposts that you are in a weird zone or something weird's about to happen. And you should have her on the show. It's really like I think an amazing theory, and she's been working with this, and she feels like nostalgia like comes into play. But I'm like, I just like these new ideas. Like we can sit around and say like, hey, ghosts are dead people, UFOs are aliens from another planet until we're blue in the face, and that I'm not discounting that. Those things may be true,
right?
But until we know for sure, which I don't think we ever will. Right. It's okay to do thought experiments, and this is where I feel like we learn to ask better questions, and these topics become much more rich to me when you really get deep, granular, and try to notice different motifs. Like Bob, for some reason, I'm really into roads. I'm obsessed with roadside encounters that people have with a bunch of different things, and the patterns that you can find I'm like, why is this a thing, and why has it been a thing for a long time?
Those are my favorite videos on Slapped Ham.
Yeah.
I love those where the weird crap shows up in the middle of the road or on the side of the road.
It's just a thing.
It's like, I would go, man, I'd have to clean my pants out.
Yeah, man, I know. Well, I mean, why do especially if you go back to the 50s and 60s, there's so many cases of a little junky looking flying saucer landing in the middle of the road in the middle of nowhere. And then all of a sudden, like beer can looking aliens hop out. I mean, like, and how many Bigfoot sightings do you hear about, like in rural areas, of them crossing the road, or people seeing the lady in white by the road? Like there was a great case outside of Nebraska City, Nebraska, where a truck driver said he saw Pan on the side of the road.
Wow!
And I'm like,
have his little flute and everything.
I mean, I didn't get a report of any instruments, but but the thing is, like, this isn't just modern stuff. When you go back and read like fairy folklore and
these
folklore,
are archetypes.
These are archetypes. And then but there's also something with roads, the means of travel. It's like a constant state of liminality between here and there. It's like these kinds of motifs and stuff are what I really obsess about, and what I find what like keeps me interested in this stuff. Because if I was just waiting around like, oh, what's Lou Elizondo gonna say next month? I'm like, I couldn't be more bored. Like there's nothing I can learn from any of that.
I'm not happy with any of these hearings. So Susan Alloway's here, and she had an experience on the road crossing the country, and had a big UFO over the top of it, and they screen memoried that all the grays looked like rabbits,
big rabbits.
And after they got them all tranced up and ready to take aboard and fool around on them, she finally saw that they were gray aliens.
Oh my God!
It's just a very classical abduction story.
Wow, that's really wild. I mean, that's amazing. That's I'd be curious. Was it for? I mean, like, because the questions I always ask people because since I've started doing my show and I moved back to Nebraska, I kind of made it known locally that I'm interested in investigating anything that people. I mean, not anything. I've had some people come out or contact me, and they're definitely not. They're trying to take me for a ride, and that's okay. Right. That's part of all this, the tricksterism stuff. I'm fine. It is part of it. But I feel like I've talked to like a good number of people now who have had some dramatic, genuine UFO experiences. And
can you imagine driving across the country with your best friend, and you stop in the middle of the road, lights come, and then you're looking out there, and there's gigantic jackrabbits in the road in front of you.
Well, I think after she was awake, they were both in a restaurant. They don't remember.
And they were gone for hours, and then woke up. The waitress came over and shook them awake while their heads were on the table. I mean, these are the kind of stories that I want to look into. That particular one's been fully investigated.
Even the most detailed craft I ever saw, or what I thought was a craft, was on a back road. I mean, this thing was so close. And I told you, I saw the detail of the underbelly. I mean, it's interesting, whatever's going on.
Nothing could be more interesting to me. Like I'm with you. But what my question for people when they have these experiences are honestly, and I'm taking a page out of like Valet's book and Keel's book probably, but I'm like to Susan, who had this experience. Also, I'm going to remind me about, I have a great rabbit story. Rabbits are a thing that people see in relationship to UFOs. She's not alone. I have a great rabbit story, but I'm always interested in, like, and like Susan, for example, was like, what was going on in your life? So when you're driving from across country, that is a liminal time, right? But like sometimes people are moving. Well, that's very liminal. So I think when you're in these liminal states, according to like, doctor or professor like George P. Hansen, who wrote an amazing book, The Trickster and the Paranormal, which I think everyone should read. He says these things happen in liminal times.
She was transporting a car across the country for someone who was moving. That's about as liminal as you get.
Absolutely, right. Absolutely. And like then I would also be like, what was going on in your personal life? Like what are you in this state of change? Are you making a change in your life, a big change? I'm just saying, like, like, I'm not a therapist, but like these things have a precedent to happen in these highly liminal times for people. Not everyone, there's exceptions. I'm not saying this is a rule, but this is something we can't deny. And to me, that is so interesting. Right.
Well, Susan's stories on breaking the silence for those who want to go see the hour-long video about it.
I sure do.
So I've seen Susan in several appearances. That was the best by 9 miles. It's a great job by Steve Neal.
I can't wait to hear it.
Yeah, it's very good, very interesting. People should go look at it. Right. If we got more great stories like that from experiencers, it would be a much more interesting field than. I'm kind of sick of being on Twitter.
Me too. It's poison. I've not been on it as nearly as much in the last like month or two, and it has really done wonders for my personal life.
It's depressing.
It is depressing.
Oh my god! I don't know. He's addicted though. He is.
No. So I'm Science Bob. We conduct conversations about physics of craft, electrogravitic propulsion, those kind of things. And I have a couple of groups there. And then there are a couple of, I can go in those spaces and I know the host is going to keep it chill.
Yeah, that's great.
And then like today, we had a really good one on the telepathy tapes.
Oh, yeah.
Have you had a chance to look at them?
I have not. No, it's on the top of my list. I'm very interested. It's very polarizing from what I understand.
Yeah. Impactful.
Yeah.
Very impactful. So it's very close to proof of telepathy. They did some things that are wrong scientifically, but they're going to redo it with double-blind, scientific, keep the moms out of the room and that kind of stuff.
Right.
So really do it right. But it's that and the interest in looking at savants, where people magically learn a field they have no business knowing.
Right.
So these are all examples of non-local consciousness. And the consciousness is not physical. So this is, if we get this stuff, it's proof. Steve, is proof.
I mean, I cannot wait to listen to this and then read the studies that come out. I mean, I've been a fan of Dr. Dean Radin's work for a while.
Oh, of course.
And he's been, he's got, undisputable scientific evidence of
5 signal results are the only thing he'll publish. And in physics, that's a discovery.
Yeah. Dean Radin if you're interested in stuff, I could not recommend looking into his work. Like, that guy has been doing the good work for like decades now. But yeah, I've heard a lot about these telepathy tapes. Some of my friends are raving about it. Oh, it's so good. And then some of my friends, oh my God, this is trash and offensive and not great to put out to.
I disagree with that completely.
Yeah, I haven't heard it. So I'm definitely excited. I have it downloaded and ready to go.
Good. So yeah, I'm highly recommended. All right. What else besides ghosts and UFOs are you looking into lately?
I'm getting my tea real quick. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No. Well, one of the things I like to talk about on my show, not often, but when it's I'm a big art appreciator of all kinds, music, film, painting, whatever. but I have some outsider artists on, some artists who are not like well known or not in the mainstream, and they're doing really unique, awesome work. So when I had the chance to talk to outsider artists, to me it's weird. I feel like art is inextricably linked with Hi Strangeness and Fortiana. Like, don't ask me why I believe that, but to me it feels that way. Like whether this phenomenon is using our art and our stories to communicate with us.
So you should go read Grant Cameron's Managing Music.
Oh yeah,
Many major musical artists wrote major big hits, and they were downloads.
Yeah, it's so interesting, right? And I mean, like, there's also, I mean, like, I don't know the validity of any of this, but there's many famous scientists who talked about talking to angels, and you know, who was it? It wasn't Newton. A person of his, I mean, like, but there's like plenty of like, you know, examples where not just in art, but like in other fields, like, you know, I think Diana Walsh Pasulka has written about this kind of ad nauseum, but yeah, it seems like there is a link between art.
Well, the other thing is this stuff is becoming more mainstream and more acceptable. Like Rice University now has a massive archive of the impossible.
Absolutely. I'm a big fan. I've read every Jeffrey Kripal book. I'm a big fan of his way of thinking. Very interesting guy. Very interesting.
And the entirety of Jacques Vallée's archives, work, etc., are in the archive. Now, some of them are sequestered for different periods of time, but let's hope it's not like the JFK investigation.
You know, I actually was lucky enough to meet him at a conference in 2021, and I got to talk to him for like 5 minutes, and mostly all my questions were about his Forbidden Science books. But he was saying like the way his files are going to be treated is much like that book, where it's like when he turns something in, it's 10 years until the embargo is off it and people can look at it, which is fair. I guess that's just kind of like how a lot of times academic research is done with the question, like, you know, sensitive academic research. So I think he's just kind of following protocols.
The thing about Forbidden Science is he names places, doesn't cover anything up. There's no redacted stuff. It's all out there.
It is. I honestly, like, I feel like if people are interested in like the machinations of government and UFOs, those are the best books to read. Like, I mean,
that and Dolan's 2 books on UFOs in the national security state.
Yep,
they're great.
They are. They will give you a good primer as well.
And he's about to release 2 more books on unidentified submerged objects. 2 massive tomes.
Cool.
Hundreds of cases.
I love USOs, man. Psh. Yes, please.
Exactly.
Yes, please.
Well, and we have Harvard University, home to a major unidentified anomalous phenomena observatory work, with the chairman of the astronomy department running it.
Mm-hmm.
And he is a world-renowned astronomer.
Right.
That's pretty different.
It's different. It is. I feel like they're looking in the wrong place.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can look at space all you want. We might find some.
No. Yeah. Oh, he's putting cameras on the ground.
Good.
So he wants to look for.
Are you talking about Avi Loeb?
Yeah, okay. Avi Loeb. He's looking for Oumuamua, but he also is building ground observatories.
Good.
But cool. It's very expensive equipment. The goal I'm after is how I can help people with a phone and an eyeball and a camera.
That's so good.
Reject the prosaic and capture things that are interesting.
Bob, do you like? Are you kind of a like? I don't know, like at what length you go in terms of like photo analysis, but like, are you a guy that could like look at pictures and probably tell if they're genuine or not?
Yeah. So in other words, I have the entire Adobe suite, all the AI programs that improve resolution.
That's awesome.
Oh yeah, I put a pretty good investment into this.
Dude, that is great. Well, if I get any photos sent to me in Nebraska, you're my guy. Bob, I did a favor.
between me doing a little processing and Mark D'Antonio, who I can send them to, he is a photo analyst.
Wow, that's awesome.
And was a contractor for the CIA.
Wow.
Okay, so he is a serious pro.
Yeah. Dang. He's like a Bruce Maccabee.
Yes,
Rest
he
in
and
peace.
Bruce Maccabee were they worked together at MUFON.
Right. Yeah, Bruce
So
was the guy.
Mark took over Maccabee's position of chief interpreter when Bruce had to retire, and Bruce passed away recently.
Yeah. No, Bruce gave a lot to UFOs. That's for sure.
That and his wife was an experiencer.
Yeah, she saw that like predator looking thing.
Well, she was in a tree.
Yeah.
She had climbed in a tree stand out there looking or hunting or whatever, and had a major experience.
Well, a lot of people lately, especially on TikTok, I know you hate TikTok. I love TikTok. Anyway, a lot of people are getting videos of, and you can see something heavy jumping and breaking branches and trees, but okay, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say I saw that too.
It's crazy, and more people are coming out with this, and nobody knows what they are at all.
That was a great video. Like I was like, what the hell is going on there? Like that was really nuts. I mean, like, and that honestly is the kind of stuff I love. I love when it's like people are always, and I'm not trying to beat a dead horse here, but like I think we're in this era where if it wasn't an F-14 pilot who saw it, I don't trust it. I'm like, I am so the opposite. I'm like, I trust like Joe Bob in rural Oklahoma seeing something outside of his ranch at 2 a.m. Those are the stories I'm really interested in. There's no agenda with these people.
What I really want to do is help Joe Bob and Jane Bob do better.
And you will.
So, awesome. Because the military and the intelligence community, they are not giving us their evidence because they're worried about advertising to our peer adversaries our capabilities, and it's covered up with classifications.
Yep.
So they're never going to release anything good.
No, it's never going to be what people are waiting. Like I feel like people like aren't really waiting for disclosure; they're waiting for confirmation, and you're just not going to. I think confirmation probably in like I say this as a person who has not had a confirmation experience. Lala, I know about your experiences. I'm not labeling them confirmation for you, but you've had some dramatic ones. Like, I think that's where confirmation comes from. I think it's personal. I don't think it's something that people can tell you about. It's like I don't know if confirmation is something that can operate on faith. I think confirmation is like experiential.
Yeah.
That's how I see it. So like I think people are waiting for confirmation though. And if like you are, there is ways you can poke the bear with this stuff if you really want to know for sure.
Right.
Like I've poked the bear a little bit, like in the last couple of years, and I found out some stuff.
Can you talk about it or?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't talk about this very much. But like, gosh, I guess it was the summer or spring of 2022. I was going to a little gathering in Crestone, Colorado. And Crestone is in the San Luis Valley. Christopher O'Brien, who we just lost, rest in peace, wrote extensively for 20 years about this place. Some of my favorite books are Christopher O'Brien books about this specific place. So I was super primed, excited to go. It's like, oh my God, there's like the craziest stuff happens here. And I was it was like a small gathering of UFO enthusiasts and whatnot. And I was kind of doing some MC work. So they brought me out there, put me up in this lovely place. And the first night we did like a CE5, like someone wanted to, I'm like, sure, I'll go out, whatever, man, let's experience it. And we're in the middle of nowhere. And first off, Crestone is like the darkest place in the lower 48 and the quietest place. It is, when I say it is like desolate, it is like no one is out there. You can barely see your hand in front of your face. It's magnificent. So we did the CE5 thing. We had like, night vision goggles. Some people thought they saw some triangle things. To me, they looked like satellites. I wasn't like, it really looked mundane to me. But later that night, we went back to our little cabins and we were in the middle of nowhere, mind you. I mean, like truly in the middle of nowhere. And with these little conjoining cabins, and we were going to have a couple beers. I had 2 IPAs in me. And we were walking back to our cabin, and like in the crossway between, there was this like little space between the cabins. Another guy and I saw what looked like dancing rectangles that were like a humanoid thing made of rectangles.
Wow.
It looked like a shadow. It was like a dark shadow. And it could have been like the light doing something weird and an animal went by and it was like projected something like, but it felt so weird and it was so unthinkably terrifying to me to where, and the weird thing is we went back in the house. The guy did not want to talk about it. He just goes, "Good night, Steve." I'm like, but wait, we should talk about what we saw. And he did not want to talk about it. I'm like, fair enough. And we weren't friends. I barely knew this person, truly. And I open up my room, and a white mouse runs over my shoe. And I was like, what does that mean? And then I went to bed in my winter coat with my shoes on, slept about 4 hours, woke up the next morning, and just left. And I was leaving that day, but I was like, I can't sleep. I need to get out of here. I have like bad vibes off the charts here. And I drove back for about 9 hours and didn't listen to a podcast, no music. I was like, I'm burning my UFO books. I'm done with this stuff. I got what I wanted and I did not like it. And then a couple days later, I was like, no, man, maybe that was kind of cool. So I got over it. But that, to me, I can't say it was a confirmation experience, but I was like, that was something happened, or it wasn't really a piece of Hi Strangeness, but I got that feeling where I was like, I've never felt this way before. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. And I've been scared. I've been in life or death situations in my life, like a lot of us have, but this felt different than that. You know, like right. I can't. Language fails for me to be able to put it into words. Like Lala, maybe you know what I'm talking about, but like,
oh, she definitely does.
Yeah. But I do think if you want to mess around and have experiences, I do think like it may just like appear as synchronicities. Like I can't remember who was it that said, was it like a Gurdjieff or something like that? He said like, or no, I think it was Carl Jung. He said, when you do consciousness expanding research, reading, or thinking about it, synchronicities will happen more often.
Oh yeah. So we were driving. You know, now that we're together, we have stuff all the time. So we were driving home 2 months ago, from an art gig, and across the road, just as we got to Harford County, Maryland, a cylinder flew across the road in front of us.
What?
Oh yeah, and I didn't have my camera, so I reached down to get my camera. As soon as I looked up, it had disappeared.
Was this in the evening?
No, it was the mid-afternoon. It was bright daylight.
Was it like a light cylinder, or like it looked like a structured, like almost like the ghost?
Oh no, it was a silver cylinder with a black nose.
A cigar-shaped, dude.
Yeah, and it was. I don't know.
It was a cigar. So first I said, she says, "What is that?" And I look at this is an airplane. We're close to the BWI, and I went, "Wait a minute. There's no wings. There's no contrail. There's no nothing. That's a cylinder UFO."
And then it disappeared.
And then it had a blunt, a rounded black nose. And I reached for my phone, looked up, and it was gone.
Was it moving? Like, was it cruising?
Oh, yeah. It was flying across the road. And then when I went down and looked up, it went from here to gone.
Like it was low?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was like 300 feet over the road.
Yeah.
Excuse me? Like,
I gotta come to Maryland.
Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding. I gotta come to. Seriously, if I'm ever in the area, I'll make you guys. I'll buy you guys dinner.
We were sitting on our deck.
That'd be great.
We were sitting on our deck, and I have my new Psionics low light level camera. I'm looking up at the sky, got it going, looking up, and triangle UFO flies straight over our house.
Jesus.
But we live by
we live near Aberdeen Proving Grounds.
The government place.
Yeah.
Let me tell you how near we live. We have cracks in the plaster and the walls from the bomb shaking the house.
No kidding.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
They had to cover that, and home repairs.
Yeah. The insurance will pay for it.
So they're like, nah, fuck you. We're not. Sorry.
Man, that is such a cool. Like, I can't imagine. Like, I have seen a couple weird lights, and that is awesome. But like, to see something at 300 feet in the air, structured and a cigar-shaped craft, like we're talking about, this is like an old. This sounds like an encounter or a sighting from 1959. And that's what I love about it, because like I'm such a like retro UFO geek, where I like, give me those saucers, give me those old school like nuts and bolts, baby. Like, you know, like,
maybe the weirdest night we had is we were in Havre de Grace's, right next to Havre de Grace's 300-year-old cemetery, and there were orbs all over it. So there's a railroad trestle, and the moon was right above it. It was a fabulous photo. So she grabs her phone, takes a picture. The moon is framed in the railroad crossing trestle just perfectly. And then I noticed there's some energy worm weaving its way through the picture, and it was in 3 pictures as it moved across the road right in front of us.
Like a green color?
Blue-green color. It was wild.
Whoa, cool.
I
Man.
like the stories of some astronauts said, a couple of them said they saw a big snake flying in the air in space. Did you guys hear
the Chinese astronauts?
Really?
Yeah.
Yes. So there's
awesome.
They had knocking on the outside.
What? That is so cool.
Oh, so people should go and on YouTube and put in shuttle tether experiment. And in there, they have this shuttle, they extend it to about 1 kilometer, and it breaks. Mm-hmm. And it flies off. And as it flies off, it is surrounded by plasma creatures.
Is that an old one? I think maybe yeah, that is weird. And then there's the one, another shuttle one that was big in the 90s of that, like, I think that they said it was ice crystals, but it looked like we shot something at something. I think it's like S449 is what it's called, or something like that. It is worth looking at. It was a big deal in the 90s, and it was never really, like, I think still today, it's like some of the most interesting footage I've ever seen. Like,
I loved it when they had the infrared camera on the shuttle and they didn't turn it off. You saw crap all the time, and they finally started turning it off every time something came into view, because they were getting too much nuttiness from people who were demanding they comment. And NASA stands for no such UFO.
Not a straight answer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Not a straight answer, and no such UFO.
Oh my God.
I wish they would explore more of the ocean, because I think there's lots of creepy, weird stuff in there that we have no idea about.
Yeah, you know, the oceans. I could not agree more. Like, it almost seems more likely to me that they would be coming from the ocean than outer space. That is something I agree. We should be looking into that deeply. You know what else I just found out? I don't know if you guys knew this. I found this was such an interesting. I'm not trying to say I believe in a hollow earth, but it is a fun idea. But there is more water inside of the earth than there is in all the ocean water put together.
Right.
I just learned that, and like, I think that's something we didn't know until fairly recently. Like, you know, that is an amazing discovery. So that would lead to all kinds of caves, caverns, tunnelways, like wide open spaces the size of like the United States. I mean, like, it is really like something to think about.
That, and there are these vents where the energy coming from these heated vents is enough to have life, because we found that life in the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about a moon of another planet. There's moons of Saturn and moons of Jupiter that underneath the ice are huge oceans that have more water than all the water on Earth.
Yeah.
There's life in this solar system besides us.
You should look up Crater Earth. Sorry, you should look up Crater Earth. That's interesting conspiracy. It's so the person doesn't really believe in planets. They think that where we live is much bigger than what they're telling us, and we're in like a little crater, which is Earth, and then, you know, Mars is in, Saturn is another crater, because they lined up a map and they did something and they lined it up with the moon. They think the moon is a reflection of where we really live. And some of the map, I know it sounds stupid, but look crater of the map aligned with a lot of the moon map. I know you're laughing at me.
I am laughing.
Whatever.
She's not saying she believes this, though. It's just an idea.
Oh no, she loves this stuff.
It's fun. It is fun.
She has so much enjoyment looking at the conspiracy stuff on TikTok. Why not?
It's good fun as long as it doesn't disrupt your life. Like I mean, like, look, I'm obsessed with Hollow Earth stories.
Yeah.
And like stories of like crypto terrestrials. Like there was an incredible book written by this guy named Mac Tonys, who sadly died when he was 34. Who knows what he would have come up with? But it was very much in the John Keel Valet vein, where he wrote, and he called the book a meditation, a thought experiment. He's like, I don't believe this. But however, there is a compelling argument to be made that this phenomenon is from here, lives alongside of us, but has been able to mask it. It's almost like the breakaway civilization. He called it the book's called The Crypto Terrestrials. It's only like 100 pages. One of the best reads you'll ever have. It's so good.
Last name Tonnes.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, I know that book.
Yeah, it's really good. And I'm not saying I believe that idea, but I love that idea. I love it so much. Like it's just so interesting to me. And like maybe the thing is, like, none of us know every theory is as valid as the next. And like I change my mind every year about this stuff. I learn more, I read more, I discover a new author, and their thought experiments are more interesting to me. I'm like, so I'll put it, like, for a while it's like, oh, they're interdimensional. But then I'm like, I don't even understand what that means. Like it's so vague to me. It's almost like the most vague answer. They're interdimensional. Like, well, like, okay, like it's almost like a cop-out answer. But and they may be like, they may emanate from a dimension next to ours. That is obviously very possible. But I personally don't understand it. And I'm not a scientist. I'm just a comedian who's a real geek for this stuff. So I'll put, like, my frame of reference to me is like, I'm always looking for the most interesting and new ideas. And because I'll never know, I'll never have a fixed opinion on any of this stuff. Even if I had a dramatic experience, I can
do a pretty good demonstration of the extra dimensions.
Please.
It's actually easy to state, so I'll just state it.
Teach me.
Pretend like our universe is a flat piece of paper.
Right.
So take a pencil, poke a hole through the paper. That's somebody coming in from an extra dimension. All you ever see is the little hole as they're passing through. And when they're gone, the hole closes.
Right.
That's an interdimensional travel.
I love it.
And so you got to kind of abstract that in your mind to get to much higher dimensions.
Right.
But it's spiritually identical.
Right. I mean, so like, even like, yeah, I mean, that opens up so many like wonderful questions already just based on what he says. I'm like, well, is then like non-local consciousness interdimensional? Like,
I believe that's true, since we can't. I believe in non-local consciousness. There's too many examples of it. She and I both have done remote viewing. She does all sorts of telepathic stuff, and it happens all the time. And now we have telepathy tapes talking about it. So consciousness is non-local.
Mm-hmm.
How does the signal get there?
Yeah.
We can't detect anything. So I think there's some other thing going on in some other dimension.
Right. And then if, and like a question I would have, and this is obviously like, what happened before the Big Bang type bong room dorm hit question, then I guess the question is like, is no like non-locality. So if it's non-local, is there a cage? Is there a parameter for how far our non-locality before the signal becomes too weak for us to use? Like, I mean, like as a science guy, I'm sure this is stuff you're thinking about too. It's like, is non-locality basically like married to the planet we're on, or is it like, can it be experienced, our consciousness in far light years away?
We're guaranteed, because of Mach's principle and Einstein's work and a bunch of other stuff, that the physics in our space-time is the same everywhere.
Right.
Go off, be the pencil that goes through into a different dimension. The physics can be totally different, and maybe signals never fade.
Right. I like that. You're fun to do. You gotta love smarts up there, guy. You got college, I can tell.
Well, I started thinking all this weird stuff when I was 10 years old. I mean, I was reading science fiction before I could do calculus.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like, while people are always so quick to point out, and like I am guilty of this myself, of the negativity in UFOs and the toxicity in some of the even fascism, there's such a positive, like almost like thing in a way, because I do feel like it expands your mind in such, like, if you want to, I always tell people this, like, you can watch videos and you can talk to people, but I think when you're studying like 40 topics and stuff, the end of the day, you're going to have to do a lot of reading, and you are, and reading just makes you smarter. It does.
I'm going to give you an opinion. If you read about UFOs, you look at a few videos about UFOs, and then you decide to make it a regular part of your life, to go out and think about, I wish I could see a UFO, and go out 100 nights in a year for an hour.
Yeah.
You'll see them.
With good intention.
With good intention. You want to have a good intention. Whatever they are, say only if you're a good intention.
Right.
They will show up.
Yeah. I think there's something to it. I mean, like, it's funny. This is almost like the common thread between other experiencers I've talked to. They're like, if you want to see one, you will. They're like, I may be able to see it easier than you, but you can too.
Okay, so I went and visited Chris Bledsoe, and I've had a massive experience standing next to him. I left there knowing you could have those experiences, so I started having them at home.
Really?
So it's exactly what you're saying. Your consciousness has been broken open, and now you know it can happen. And I was getting orbs in my home, flying orbs in triangular form right outside my front door.
What?
I have a video of all that crap.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Where they follow the person home. It's interesting.
Wow.
I had all of that.
You guys are like a UFO power couple. I'm loving it.
Yeah, I guess we are. So I had the telescope out in my home in Alabama before I moved here. I had a telescope out back next to the swimming pool. And then this thing was flying across the sky. And I went, oh, that's an airplane. I haven't seen an airplane fly there before. And then I realized, wait a minute, that airplane's underneath the trees. And it pulled up right at the fence, was the edge of my property with the neighbor's property, and just stopped and went blink, blink, blink. And it stood there for 20 minutes. And I says, look, thank you for coming. I really appreciate it, but I got to go inside now. Went inside, got a cup of coffee because it was freezing. Looked out there, it was still going blink, blink. And I went, thank you, good night, and went to bed.
Jeez, Bob, when did you start having like experiences?
2020.
So does that kind of coincide between the point where you guys met and like started hanging out?
Yeah, it was two years after that where we got to know each other.
Yeah.
Bledsoe.
Yeah, so 2020 is when I met Bledsoe, and I've had experiences not unlike his, but unique to me.
Yeah.
Since then, and
so since you went to Bledsoe's, you have.
Oh yeah, that broke the door open. So then we got together, and I realized she did some stuff for me that cracked my skull open.
Yeah.
And then I went, oh man, people survive after death.
Yeah.
So I'm laying in the bed, I'm going off to sleep, and I hear something, and I look, and over in the corner of my bedroom, in a dark corner, there is a figure standing there.
Oh my.
And it knows I see it. So it walks forward, and it's about a 14-year-old boy. And I went, what the fuck? So it walks up, and it stands right at the end of the bed, looks me over, and disappears. So by then, we're having a regular conversation because I'm trying to figure out all the things she has been into, and it's aliens and ghosts and everything. She's been in everything. So anyway, so I said, I made a guess. I says, we're spending a lot of time together. Do you have a picture of your dad when he was 14 or 15? She showed me the picture. It was him.
No.
Absolutely.
Oh my God.
And just to reinforce it, a year and a half later, when I was at Gulf Shores with grandkids, I was laying on the lawn chair reading a book, and it was dark. And a woman walks up the driveway, stops right at the corner of my camper, looks at me, looks me up and down, disappeared. And that was her mother.
I believe it because my dad, when I would bring boyfriends around, he would look them. He was very sweet, but he'd look them in the eye and he'd say, "I've got a shotgun and a shovel." So I guarantee that's what he was doing.
He was giving you the old shotgun and a shovel look.
Yep. They didn't find me or anything, but I just went, wow, this stuff is real, and I am no longer a doubter.
Yeah.
I have a question. I think it's interesting now. I kind of dabble in listening to people who've had experiences with demons or scary stuff.
Yeah.
Have you? I think you said you haven't had experiences, but have you had any guests on that have had experiences with exorcisms or anything like that? Or
No, I haven't had. I mean, I would love to speak to someone who's, felt that way, or at least viewed their experience through that lens of the kind of that. I truly don't know that much about exorcisms, and I guess just because I feel like a lot of this stuff is kind of through the different lenses. So if it's a Christian lens, it's going to be like kind of biblical demons. It's funny when I've had different people on. I think when I attended my show, one of the things I asked, I go, "What is a demon?" It feels like such a gray area to me, where it's kind of like you kind of graft. It's usually associated with negativity or evil, whatever. But I didn't grow up with any religion, so I don't have a framework to really be able to conceptualize what a demon is. To me, it's if it's Muslims talking about the jinn, that's their version of a demon, right? And even the way Celtic or the Scottish talk about bad fairies, I'm like, well, that sounds like they're talking about a demon. So it's I think all these things are sort of the same thing, just different. Whoever is experiencing it, they're going to put their belief system or framework or their mythology, folklore, whatever you want on top of it. So I kind of am like a broken record with all this stuff. I do feel like there is I feel like maybe evidence is the wrong word, but there's so much co-creation, I think, between human beings or the experiencer and whatever this phenomenon is. And I think that's sort of how we see it. I mean, if you think about the flying airship wave of the 1890s, these are UFO encounters. I mean, people were experiencing beings coming off these things. It'd be short little 4-foot things asking for water and saying, "Well, we got to go to Brazil where it's 2:00." Say bizarre stuff.
Yeah.
But that was just kind of in this valet's idea. It's they show us a little bit ahead of where we are.
Yeah. So, we moved in together, and we almost immediately began to have experiences. And over the next year, with cameras and other things, we experienced everything, including getting it all on video and photos.
Yeah.
And so I'm not trying to do science with any of that. I'm just keeping the collection so other people can say, even a scientist can be weird.
That's exactly right. And Bob, I you've had a very amazing career and very obviously off the charts smart dude. And when you talk about this stuff, it means something. It's an interesting perspective. I love talking to people who are scientists. I mean, they know things I don't know, and I can learn a ton. And I love the idea. See, I mean, I go back to this. It's what you were planning to do by help citizens understand what they photographed in the sky better. That is huge to me, because all I care about is citizens and their reports. I don't.
So let me tell you what. It's interesting what changed. I'll tell you what changed. So several years ago, I had this idea, and I put together some folks that got 75% of the way to delivering, but it was going to be $3,000.
Mm-hmm.
And the lead developer quit. So then I took all the stuff and gave it to another team. And then they did development for a year and a half, and it was going to cost just over $1,000. And the lead developer quit. So then I turned it over to an open source, open everything, we're going to give it all away group in Europe.
Yes.
And they're continuing to develop. Nobody's pressing them. Nobody's really quitting, or they come and they go, and they have code.
Good.
But it's still not getting there. And people need something. So here is what's happened. When in the 1980s, 90s, and early 2000s, I wrote millions of lines of code.
Mm-hmm.
But then I turned into an engineering and science leader, and I had to manage other people doing the work, and I stopped coding.
Right.
But there is a very, very freeing thing that's available now.
That's beautiful.
It's called ChatGPT.
Yeah.
You describe it, it'll write it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm very good at describing stuff. I didn't know a lot of the modern coding languages. I say, please write this in C++ or C#.
Right.
Or Objective-C. Just does it.
Amazing.
Yeah. So that's really going to change my ability to deliver stuff. And what I'll do is put it in an open source file so anybody can steal it. They can go take where I got and go further.
That's so wonderful, though. Like, this is what I love. I love like people with, it's like, you know, everyone is like super gifted at something, I'm convinced. And it's like, it may not be described by the quote unquote 5 branches of intellectualism or whatever they term it, but like everyone has something, who is interested in this stuff and, you know, is passionate for the right reasons, I think has something to offer. And like, I am not a scientist, I'm not a philosopher, but I feel like I'm a good communicator. And so I'm good at talking to people. And so that is how I feel like I can contribute. We all have a role to play if you want to. It's not like, it's like we have to do this. It's like, it doesn't matter if we do it or not. I mean, like, it's helpful, but I'm not trying to sound like lofty or anything, but I want to help. I want to be a part of pushing the ball down further. And I feel like maybe my role is to like help other people ask better questions. And
you can do a lot if your goal is not to make money.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have no interest. Like, I have a job for making money and yeah, it's like, I think you're so right. I think there is a tendency when people maybe come into the right intentions, but then they use UFOs to pay their bills. I'm like, gets a little dicey then, you know, and that's okay. I feel like people should be able to make money. Like if people have a podcast or, you know, they're speaking at a conference, they should be paid. Like, I feel like that is work. But I think if you're getting into UFOs to like be part of the quote unquote grift of it, I'm not interested in that. That's
no, me either.
That's not cool.
see, we're just over an hour. We have an hour show, but we had 445 live viewers.
All right. Thanks for watching.
It'll be quite a bit more than that by the end of the week. So I'm really happy you came on. And I know this conversation is not over. So come back soon. I will work it out with you.
I would love to. I think you guys are both wonderful. Lala, I think you're so brave and your experience is so interesting. You have such a good like mindset about it. And I feel like you talk about this stuff is really important. Bob, I'm just impressed by you as a dude and like what you're bringing to the table. I just think it's great. So I'm happy to know both of you, and thanks for having me on your show.
Everyone, please have a great evening and visit Steve on his show and other places. Read his books and go look at his TV shows and movies and other things he's been in. And have a great evening.
Thank you.
Bye, friends.